So I'm going to do a short presentation to start off with. I'm Susan Howitt. I'm Associate Director, Education for the Research School of Biology, and co-hosting with me is Julie Beckman, who's my deputy, and she also has a role as Associate Dean for Science. So I've just put a couple of notices in the chat, just telling everyone that your microphone has been muted, but if you want to ask a question, you can click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll answer those at the end. If you've already looked at the pre-recorded video that I've done, then this is pretty much the same. And so that means you can switch off for about 20 minutes and come back and ask any questions that you might have at the end. But what I'm going to do now is switch over to the presentation. Okay, I think that is on.
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is biology and biomedical science at ANU. I'm going to talk about the degree program, what we do in biology, and then we'll open it up to questions at the end. Now, this sounds obvious, biology is about life, but biology is actually a huge discipline. And so what I'm going to do first of all is show you a couple of different ways of thinking about biology and its breadth. So first of all, we can think about biology from molecules, and I'm sure you'll all recognize DNA here. And biology goes everything from molecules up to complex ecosystems like this coral reef that I have on the other side, and of course, everything in between. This is a very standard picture from a first-year textbook, and it shows the same thing but with a little more detail, going all the way from atoms to ecosystems. There are a number of sub-disciplines in biology, all of which we cover, and I'm just going to show you those. So biochemistry is obviously up the molecular end, where chemistry and biology interact. Cell biology, obviously about cells, so we're getting a little bit bigger. Genetics can be done at the molecular level or at larger scale as well. And when we talk about physiology or anatomy, we're thinking about body systems and whole organisms and how they're put together. At the other end, you have ecology, where we're looking at ecosystems, communities, and populations. Quantitative biology is a relatively new area of biology, but it's increasingly important, and I'll talk a little bit more about quantitative biology later on. And central to biology is, of course, the study of evolution. And so that acts as a linking discipline that brings everything together. So that's one way of looking at different scales of biology. Here's another way. So it covers animals and plants and microorganisms, and people obviously have very different interests. Again, they're connected by evolution. And so we talk about the unity and diversity of life. Unity reflects the fact that molecules and cells are very similar in all life forms. So at the molecular end, it doesn't matter too much what organism you study. At the other end, life forms are amazingly diverse, and here's where we come back to plants and microorganisms. And then it matters very much which you study. Within this, of course, is us, humans, and this is where biomedical science comes in. Of course, we're animals, but what we do here at ANU is incorporate a lot of biomedical science into biology more generally. So we teach the broad ideas and concepts and apply them to different organisms and systems. And that, of course, includes biomedical science. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on too. But I'm just going to give a couple of examples of how these different levels play out. So you might want to study cystic fibrosis. This is one of the most common genetic diseases that there is. And let's have a look at how this operates at the different levels. So it's a genetic disease, which means DNA is mutated. And this leads to an altered protein. And this is what the protein looks like here. And this leads to altered ion transport. So the way ions get in and out of cells. So we're getting up to the cellular level. And this means that the cells are altered in the way they secrete. This leads to impaired mucosal defense, which affects the lungs. And this results in the infection and inflammation and lung dysfunction, which characterizes cystic fibrosis. So now we're up at the anatomy, physiology, whole tissue level. And of course, this affects the whole organism. But there are also interesting population questions about cystic fibrosis. 70% of sufferers have the same mutation. And why is that? And why is cystic fibrosis so common? There's some indication that having one copy of the mutated gene might protect you against childhood diarrhea, and it's only when you have two copies that you get sick. So you can look at cystic fibrosis at any of these levels. You can think about cures and remediating the symptoms at most of these levels as well. That's one example. Let's look at photosynthesis.
Susan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your sound is cutting in and out a bit.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, just keep letting me know and I can repeat things. I can move a bit closer.
Okay.
I don't think there's much else I can do other than speak up.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Right, photosynthesis is something that we study quite a bit. At ANU, we have quite a bit of funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Again, we can do this at different levels. So photosynthesis is coded for in the DNA because photosynthesis relies on proteins, which are produced by genes, and here's what some of them look like. These proteins produce a chloroplast, which is seen in the leaves, and this harvests the energy of light to synthesize sugars, which allows plants to grow. And we can look at trying to make this whole process more efficient, again, at any of these levels. And once we have an altered crop, a changed plant, then we're also interested in, does that work in the field? What effect does it have on the ecosystem? Is it as good for farmers as it is in the lab? So again, you can study photosynthesis at any of these different levels, showing again the breadth of biology. Does that sound okay, Julie?
Yes, it's getting better, thank you.
Okay, good. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about is quantitative biology. And so a lot of biology now includes large data sets, and this means that you can generate mathematical models. And lots of students interested in biology aren't so interested in maths, but it's something to think about. If you have a friend who likes maths, you could suggest to them that they take biology as an elective, because this is a growth area and it's where a lot of the jobs are. So here are the kind of things that you might do. So I'm sure you've all heard of the Human Genome Project and DNA sequencing. You can analyze DNA sequences. You can put these together to look at how different organisms are related. You can also use a whole lot of data generated from what happens inside cells, what genes are turned on and off, what proteins are there, what metabolites are there, to model what happens inside cells. You can use similar mathematical models to model ecosystems as well. And increasingly, this is the kind of things that biologists are doing. So that's what biology covers. Now I'm going to talk about what we do at ANU. And we're a very strong research department, and so we like to link our research and our teaching. I'm going to introduce you to a few of our researchers and show you how they share their research and how it's relevant to the teaching that they do in our courses. First of all, this is a biology precinct, similar to the background that Julie and I both have on. It's a slightly different view. This is one of the biology buildings. Over this side, we have our new teaching labs. So we have great practical classes in those labs and also field classes where you go out into the field. You have options to do a research project with some of our researchers, and many of our researchers have won awards for their research. Many of our teachers have also won teaching awards, so we're very high quality in both areas. We have relatively small classes, and these are big compared to school classes, but small compared to some of our competitor universities. And I've mentioned our modern lab facilities. So let's just go through some of our research and teaching. So this is Uli Matesius. She works on plants, again trying to improve efficiency, but this time looking at nitrogen use, not photosynthesis. And she teaches plant and developmental biology. This is Stefan Brewer. He works on nutrient transporters and how they might be affected in human disease. And he teaches biochemistry and nutrition. This is Rob McGrath. He works on bird calls and how birds respond to calls from different species. And this is exactly what he teaches in the field of behavioural ecology. Adrian Nicotra teaches ecology, and her special area of interest is alpine plant communities. And so she runs some field trips up into the mountains for some of our undergraduate courses. This is Alex Meyer. He works on the malaria parasite and teaches parasitology. And here he is in one of our teaching labs. This is Celeste Linda. She works on truffles and looks at the truffle yield. She works with the truffle industry and she teaches genetics and also the study of fungi. So those are some of our researchers. So what will you actually do if you come here? Well, there's a whole heap of degrees in which you can do biology. So these first three here are very general degrees and they differ in the entry ATAR and the amount of research that's incorporated. And so these degrees are good if you're not sure what you want to do because there are lots of options within them. If you want to combine different areas of study, these degrees are also good because of the flexibility. The next batch of degrees are all specific. You can see we offer genetics, biotechnology, medical science, and health science. So these are more structured degrees, and that means you don't have as much choice in the courses that you can do. You still have some. So these are good if you're really sure about what you're interested in. If you want recognition for study in a particular area and you don't mind losing that flexibility to do a wider range of electives. You can also combine most of these as a flexible double degree. So you can do one of these degrees plus another degree and graduate with both in 4 years. These are the areas of study that we offer at ANU. You can see they match up to the diagrams that I showed you earlier. These are our areas of specialisation. Because biology is big, it is often challenging to choose what you want to do, but you don't have to worry about that straight away because first year is really general. So what we do in first year is we have 2 core biology courses that give a broad introduction to all of these different areas. We recommend that you do chemistry as well if you can. All of the molecular, biochemistry, biomedical science requires first year chemistry, so you need to do that. First year chemistry at ANU requires high school chemistry as well, but there is a bridging course in February. So if you now want to do biology, you haven't done chemistry, that's okay, you can still do the bridging course. Doing biology and chemistry in first year gives you the maximum range of opportunities for later years. In second year, we focus on the big ideas and the main concepts. And if you look at our second year courses, they have names like ecology, genetics, evolution, those big disciplines that I talked about earlier in the talk. And in third year, then you specialise in these kind of disciplines over here. And so then you can do a range of courses in areas that are of most interest to you. So let's have a look at how you learn. So we still run lectures, so not right at the moment. And this here is one of the new buildings at ANU, which has a lot of flexible learning areas for interactive lectures and tutorials. And so we run smaller group tutorials as well. Here are 2 pictures of our labs, so our lab classes, a smaller one and one of our big labs. And I've mentioned field courses. So these are some pictures of students out in the field, enjoying themselves in different environments. And of course, at the moment, we're doing more online learning. We've always used some blended learning at ANU. And this is a screenshot from one of my online courses. It's got some text and inserted video and then a link to an assessment underneath that. So finally, where are our graduates employed? Whole range of places. A science degree is actually quite a general degree, and you learn a whole lot of useful things around problem solving, analysing complex information, presenting that to other people. So that means our graduates are well suited to a whole range of different places. And this includes opportunities in the lab, in the field, policy, or regulation as well. And of course, there are options for further study in allied health or medicine or in research areas. I'm going to leave it there and open up for questions. So you have the Q&A tab, you can type your questions and Julie will field them back to me. If you think about questions later, you can email me directly. So this is my email here, or you can email biology student inquiries at this email as well. And I'll post those two email addresses in the chat as well. So you can follow up later if you want to. Okay, I will stop screen sharing there and open up to questions.
I think everyone's a bit shy, Susan. Can you see?
They are, that's right. And I posted in the chat, but Julie, you're saying you can't see it.
I can't see your chat. Oh, here we go.
Oh, there it is. I just forgot to click. Good. Okay.
Is anyone interested in doing, what are you interested in? Doing biology, doing biomed? Any favorites in there that you saw?
Well, I'll post the email addresses into the chat.
If anyone wants to just be unmuted and speak instead of typing a question, just raise your hand and we can allow you to do that as well. Do we ask questions in chat or in the Q&A? In the Q&A is fine, but we can still see the chat. So if you haven't used it before, down the bottom you should have an option to open the Q&A window. Don't worry about your typing and your spelling. We'll be able to figure it out. We do typos.
We're used to it these days.
Yeah, we do typos all the time, but don't tell anybody that. Here we go. Can all undergrad science courses be used to get into medicine postgrad?
Depends on where you want to do medicine. ANU, there are no restrictions, so there are no prerequisites at all. You can use any degree, even a degree that's not science. That's not true for some other medicine, postgraduate medicine. So usually the prerequisites that they have are anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry. And we offer all of those courses here. So as long as you do those 3 courses, then you're covered for medicine anywhere.
Okay, thank you. And can the biotechnology degree be eligible for a biomed engineering career?
Yes, potentially. It's hard to combine engineering with other degrees, although we do offer a flexible double of engineering and biotechnology. What that means is because engineering has a whole lot of requirements that they have to meet so that you meet the professional requirements, it means that you have very limited choice of electives, but you can squish it all in.
Yeah, so something we explained yesterday, Susan, is that it's very confusing because we have different colleges. And even though it sounds like we've got 3 different colleges that all do science, so engineering and computer science, and then we've got College of Science, and then we've got College of Health and Medicine. We actually all teach into everybody else's courses. So even though you might be flagged as being in the College of Health and Medicine, you'll still be doing a lot of biology with us, and there's a lot of toing and froing and helping with that.
Yes, thank you, Julie. That was actually something I meant to say in my talk and didn't.
Yeah, so it's just there to confuse you. Don't worry about those things at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. The curriculum is seamless, so you don't see the different colleges in the curriculum.
Yeah. All right, so someone's interested in biology and chemistry, enrolled in the biomed degree. How can I ask how different learning those 2 subjects are compared to high school?
Yeah, so they are more in depth and more independent. So you're on your own more. I mean, obviously we're there and there are classes, but where it's up to you to make sure that you do the reading, complete the work, hand things in on time. There is overlap between the curriculum in biology and chemistry in first year and up to year 12. But usually, even though we're covering the same things, there'll be a bit more depth, or they'll be extended, or there'll be some extra things. So I don't know, Julie teaches first year and I don't. So maybe Julie, you want to add to that?
No, I think you've summed that up pretty well. We cater for a lot of different students, for those who don't have any biology background, as well as those who have done, say, year 11 and or year 12. And so we have some extension information for those who have done biology before, but we also want to make sure that other students who haven't done biology before can get up to speed with biology as quickly as possible. So it's a little bit harder and more detailed and in depth, but that just makes it more interesting. All right, someone's interested in neuroscience, particularly parts that have a lot of overlap with psychology and biology. Yep. So would a specialization be considered closer aligned to biology or psychology?
Yeah, so that's one of those ones where it doesn't really matter. So we offer a specialization in neuroscience, and there are a couple of psychology courses that count towards that. And psychology also has a couple of courses in biological psychology, which is obviously getting onto the type of things that we do. So there's a couple of options there. So one thing that you could think about is a double degree in psychology and biology, or you could just do a single degree, but in either discipline and include a major in the other discipline. So because our degrees are quite open, you could do a biology major, and you could also do a psychology major and some of the specialist neuroscience courses. So yeah, that's completely possible.
Yeah, so I teach human biology in first year, and I have about 40% of my students are also doing psychology with it, and then obviously interested in those fields. So what courses would we recommend for somebody interested in veterinary science?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think it comes back to you'll have a grounding in all of the basics of biology. So it's probably like medicine. You want to do the anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry. Different vet schools have different requirements, and I'm not sure what they are. So what you'd need to do is have a look at some of the vet schools where you thought you might want to go. Have a look at what the prerequisites for entry are, and then come and have a chat with me when you get to ANU or before that, and then we can sort out whether we're able to meet those requirements or not.
We don't offer veterinary science at ANU, but I do know some students who have gone off to study veterinary science afterwards.
We've got a couple of questions in the chat too. And I think, Julie, you've partially answered this one. Is it okay to study biology even if I didn't do particularly well in high school bio? And yes, as Julie said, about half of our first year students have not done biology at school. And that's usually perfectly fine. So that's all good. And a PhD in infectious diseases in immunology. PhD, the most important thing to do is to find a supervisor. And so we have a small amount of work in infectious diseases in the Research School of Biology. And also there's some work in the John Curtin School of Medical Research. So what you need to do is go to the web pages for both RSB and John Curtin, have a look at the researchers there, and then contact them.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, are there flexible vertical doubles for the science degrees? And so that's a yes and no answer. So there currently are, but they're being phased out. But if you did want to go on to a master's degree from an undergraduate degree in biology, we would give you some credit for that. So it would come to kind of the same thing.
So what are the requirements for first degree in medicine? Oh, from Nigeria. I don't know if we can answer that.
No. That one, you would need to contact the Science Inquiries email probably.
Yeah, so if you go to the contacts in the open day contacts, there'll be lots of contacts in there. And if you go to Science Inquiries, and they'll answer that query for you as best they can. So can we combine health and science into a flexible double?
And that, I think not. Is that?
I think there's too much overlap.
Yeah, well, it depends on what it's a flexible double with.
Yeah.
Let me just quickly look that up. Do you want to answer the next one, Julie, while I'm doing this?
I don't know if I can, but I'll read it out. Is virology one of the included courses?
Oh, no. So we do a bit of virology in one of the third year infection and immunity courses, but there isn't a whole virology course. There are a couple of people working on viruses in the John Curtin School, so you could potentially do a research project with them as part of, but that would be not until your third year.
So it would be included as part of your specialisation.
Yeah.
Could you share with us some interesting experiences you've had while teaching?
So many.
Could we ever? Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm about to do. Just as we've closed this meeting, I'm about to go off and demonstrate how to dissect a snail for my students, which is always good fun. Susan?
Yes, I just Bachelor of Health Science is not available as a flexible double. I've just finally found that. Interesting experiences of teaching. Well, yeah, well, I mean, I think running undergraduate labs for big classes is always an interesting experience because you have a whole heap of people packed in there and everybody's keen to get going. Sometimes you're giving a lecture and you get questions that you can't answer. You get some amazing questions from students, so that's also an interesting experience. Yeah, too many.
We have a lot of fun. We
do.
There's always something to do. Our doors are open. We have a very sort of a very highly interactive experience with our students. So we sort of have an open door policy. You can come and talk to us when there's some downtime. We've got some common rooms. So we've got biology and chemistry, drop-in centres, and so does I think John Curtin. So there's lots of different ways that you can interact, and we have lots of fun and we get to know our students, and hopefully you'll get to know us as well.
Yeah. And then we also have a question about entomology. And so, yes, we do a bit. So there's a third year course, which is on zoology, and about half of that is on invertebrates and most of that is on insects.
Are there a lot of insects like flies at ANU? Actually, there's not. I mean, there are if you really go looking for them. But it's not like we're swatting flies all the time when we go outside. I don't know where you're from, but that's not our experience.
That's right. If you're Australian, it's no worse than other places. Health science. Yeah, so the health science it's a bit more restrictive, as I alluded to before, but there's still space for some extra courses, some elective courses. So it would depend on what you wanted to do, whether you could fit it in or not.
Yeah, so Susan, you haven't mentioned electives and how there's some flexibility for students. Like if you have an interest outside biology or outside science even, there's usually an option for you to take an elective, and that could be just about anywhere. So, I have students who do fine art and they want to do biology because they want to graduate and be able to do, scientific drawing and things like that. So there's a lot of mixing and matching you can do if you're into music, or if you want to continue a language or start a language. There's a lot of options for you to sort of have some space outside of science or outside of biology to explore those avenues as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've exhausted the chat for now. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, sorry, the Q&A I should have said.
Yeah. Well.
Oh, here we go. We've missed this one. Are there part-time jobs available in university research to add some experience to the degree? Or can we find it outside of the uni?
I guess this is another yes and no one. So there are jobs occasionally coming up within university research labs, but not very many, not nearly as many as there are students who are interested. And there are obviously jobs elsewhere as well. So we have CSIRO just over the road that has a lot of labs in it as well, that also sometimes look for part-time lab support. I guess the issue there, like with any job, is managing your study time and your work time. And that's obviously very individual.
The other things you can think about after first year is maybe doing some summer scholarships, and there's also options to do internships that can sort of augment your research experience and your CV, your resume.
And so then we've got one more question too. Are there opportunities to get involved with or learn more about specialised areas in early years when subjects on them aren't offered yet? To some extent there are. So most of our courses, because we are quite a research-based department, even the fundamental level courses, the first and second year courses, will sometimes add, you know, oh, this is a hot area of research at the moment, or this is what I'm doing. So there is certainly some inclusion of specialised areas within all of the fundamental subjects. The other thing, the other possibility is doing something like a research project, which is more later year. But because we're relatively small and teach quite interactively, there's always opportunities to speak to academic staff. So you can always just contact your lecturers for a chat about what they're doing, or contact other people within the school to talk about possibilities. So informally, yes, and to up to an extent within the curriculum. Well, I think we might really be done this time.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have now put my email address and the biology student admin email into the chat. So if you do have questions later, feel free to follow up with either of those.
Oh, biology related internships.
Oh, one more. Yeah.
Are they provided by the school? I think they're centrally coordinated, aren't they, Susan, now?
Yes, they are. And there's not that many, there are some, but ANU has been trying to increase the number of internships available across a whole range of areas.
How do mentors work at ANU? Oh, a few different ways.
Yes, well, I guess we don't have formal mentoring programs. For some first year courses currently have a peer mentoring program where there are study skills sessions run by later year students. But yes, otherwise it's I guess, you know, there are things like the Biology Society where you can interact with other students, and that's certainly a way to see students who have done the courses that you're doing and get feedback and advice from them.
And chemistry have a slightly different scheme where they do have third year and second year students stationed in their drop-in centres so that you can always go and chat with them as well.
Well, Julie, if you want to go and get ready for your lab, that's fine. I can hang around here in case people drop in later.
Okay.
We've nearly exhausted the possibilities, but I see that we have had people joining partway through, so I will stay.
All right. Well, nice to meet you all, and hopefully we'll see you next year.
Yes, we'd love to see you next year.
As soon as possible. Good luck with all your studies, everyone, and we'll, talk to you soon.
Okay. See you, Julie.
Bye.
Any other questions from those of you who are still here? Drop-in centres. So they're just a room that's available for students to drop into. So it's just near the front of the biology building and the chemistry building. It's just an area that's got seating. It's got a sink, hot water, so you can make yourself a cup of tea or coffee. And there's just some seating there where you can collect a couple of friends and study or just chat. In both schools, they're also quite close to where the first year coordinator offices are too, so that if you have questions, and you can have those answered pretty easily. Oh, have we got one more question? It's still coming in. How often are field trips or internships held? Field trips, there are probably 6 or 7 courses that we offer with field trips in them. And so normally what you would do would be enroll in that course. For some courses, it's maybe just a weekend field trip as part of a full semester course, but we also have several intensive courses where the whole course is a 2-week field trip. And those usually happen in summer or in the June-July break in the middle of the year. Internships, probably you would just do one of those towards the end of second year or as part of your third year. So it's not huge, but they are there so that you get the experience. Yeah, so we've got a question about neuroscience research and the Eccles Institute of Neuroscience and working and what to do if you're interested in the work that some of the teams there doing. So yeah, the web page is a good place to start. Some of the researchers there do teach undergraduate courses, but at third year level. And again, an option there would be to contact researchers to do a research project or a summer scholarship. But again, we're talking about late second year or during your third year. You can certainly look at their web pages before that. And I guess, you know, you can always contact researchers there and see whether there's any opportunities to do something earlier. But yeah, mostly they're engaged in teaching later, in the later part of the degree. Okay, where I'm from, lab practicals aren't done that often. I'm slightly worried about this. How can I prepare more for uni lab? Don't worry. People come into our labs with a whole range of different experiences. And so in first year, we do go through all of the basics. And so you get a chance to practice some of the lab activities and then do them in the lab. Usually when we assess practical work, it's not assessed on your results because it's about the learning and understanding what's going on, not about using the techniques correctly. Obviously, it's better if you use the techniques correctly, but there's lots of support for that. So in the lab, there'd be the lecturer running the prac, there'd be demonstrators who are usually our PhD students who are there to support you. So yeah, don't worry at all. And that's where, as we had a question before about our interesting teaching experiences, lots of our interesting teaching experiences do come from people doing things in the lab that probably aren't ideal, but usually are perfectly fine in the end. Okay, how is ANU different from other universities, particularly the science department? Probably the differences are size and research intensity. So as I said before, ANU is very much research focused, which doesn't of course mean we neglect our teaching. It means we integrate the research into teaching. So a lot of our teaching is done by high level researchers. So other universities have a lot more casual and junior staff running large classes, whereas in ANU we have integrated researchers from first year onwards into all of our courses. The other thing that's different is that probably we offer more labs and field experiences than other universities. I know from some of my colleagues at the big universities like Sydney and Melbourne that the size of the first year classes have grown so much that they're forced to cut back on practical work. And we are trying very hard to maintain higher levels of lab and field work. And I think we are successful in that. So that would be the main difference. And probably class size too, that classes are a bit smaller. Again, big compared to school. So we have between 400 and 500 in first year biology. But for example, University of Melbourne has 1,500 to 2,000 in first year biology. Our third year classes are almost all below 100 students. And so, and some of them are only like 20. Another question about dissections and whether we do them and what happens if you have an aversion to blood. We do a couple of dissection practicals, not many, and there we offer an alternative. So if you do have a reason that you don't want to do a dissection practical course, then you are offered an alternative activity. Right, we've got one more question, the difference between medical science and the health science degree. That is very confusing. The medical science degree is more biology based, so it's more, the focus is the underlying science, the biomedical science. And so this is where we integrate with the biology, as I talked about earlier. Health science is a more sociological and epidemiological perspective. So it has some science courses, but fewer. But then you do a bit more about population level type of thing. So, you know, where epidemiology, obviously that's a big thing at the moment with COVID-19, and some of the more social science aspects around health delivery and health, community health, that sort of thing. So some overlap, but medical science is more sciencey and health science is more social sciencey. Do I have a favourite subject matter? Well, my original training is in genetics and that's what I teach. I still love genetics. My research actually went into somewhat of a different direction, but I think genetics is probably still my most favourite. Looks like we've just gained one more participant. We've just been answering questions and have pretty much run out. But if you have one, post it up in the Q&A. Any other questions? Got 10 more minutes. Okay. What would you recommend students doing after achieving a bachelor's degree? A master's going to research, or is experience working in hospitals or pharmacies more important, especially for a medical scientist? It really depends on what you want to do. If you want to go into research, then yes, it is good to do some further study. So you would first of all do an honours year, which is a 10-month research project, and that could lead to a master's or to a PhD. It depends on what type of medical scientist, I guess. So the Canberra Hospital actually recruits medical scientists straight out of a bachelor's degree. And so what they do is assist with various procedures like around, particularly in the clinical measurement unit, so monitoring sleep, monitoring asthmatics, so that sort of stuff. There are positions there for medical scientists where they take graduate levels. If you wanted to do something that was more researchy based, then definitely you'd need further study. And of course, experience working in hospitals or pharmacies also helps, but mostly it's about the degree. Plenty of time to think about that later though. So we've had several more people join us quite late. We do have only 10 more minutes left. So there's no more formal presentation, but if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A, and I'm happy to answer them in our remaining time. Is it easy to find a job in research? It's not that easy. There are always some, and of course it depends on what type of research and how strict your requirements are for what you want to do. Again, if you wanted a job in research, I definitely recommend adding an honours year onto your degree so that you have, because that gives you more intensive lab experience and more independence. Our graduates do get employed, so we have very low unemployment rates of our graduates, but it's not necessarily in research. They've just got a question about the Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery. So there's a separate information session about that, I believe. That's a postgraduate course. So you need to have completed an undergraduate degree, but that can be in any area. And then you need to apply, you need to sit GAMSAT and put in an application, and then you are screened based on your GPA and GAMSAT results. But that's run by the medical school, which is separate from us. The focus of this presentation is more on undergraduate biology and biomedical science. Our research is done in a team or more of a personal job, increasingly teamwork. So especially for biology, which has become quite multidisciplinary now. And so often you'd be doing, something in your specialist area, but you'd be interacting with a specialist researcher in another area. And so if you were here for the presentation that I gave, when I talked about, for example, quantitative biology, so often you might be doing lab work, but you'd be working with a quantitative biologist to analyse and interpret the results that you were getting. That's a very common type of interaction, but there's also a whole lot more. So it's image that people have of a scientist in a white coat alone in a lab is really not accurate at all. I don't believe there are too many scholarships for medicine and surgery as well. Sorry, I missed that part of the question. Again, you would need to contact the medical school or look on their web pages to be able to work that out. All right, got a question about what equipment do you need, like laptops or things like that. Yes, I definitely would recommend a laptop. And I'm glad that you're looking forward to university. It's always exciting getting new first years in. Yeah, so for the lab work, you'll need to have a lab coat and safety glasses, but you can buy those from the bookshop at ANU. So what will happen is when you enroll next year, you'll have access before semester starts to all of your course websites, and that will tell you all of the things that you need in terms of getting lab coats and textbooks and stuff like that. A laptop, I guess, will be pretty much taken for granted because you'll be taking notes, you'll be using the course websites and so on. Probably not too much else that you need. So I guess textbooks is the other big one, but yeah, they'll be available from the ANU bookshop. For lab courses, we usually provide a lab manual, which you buy from us, but again, that will be sorted out once you enroll. So just turn up and we'll tell you everything that you need to do. Oh, and there's just one more in the chat about when classes for medicine start. So they start late January or early February, I think. It's a bit, the rest of the university starts a bit later, but the medical school starts earlier. So we would start late February. Well, we are out of time. And so I'll just draw your attention back to the chat. I've put my email there and the student admin email for biology and biomedical courses there. So if you do have further questions, then please feel free to send an email and we can follow up. But yes, looking forward to seeing hopefully some of you next year, and good luck with whatever you're doing between now and then. Okay, bye everyone.